Hi, welcome to my political show called The Political Times. Today is the second episode of Season 2. Today on the show we will be talking about the Republican National Convention. Some people might say the convention is a success, some might call it not a success. I'm the part of the non-success part. But I will explain you why the Republican Convention was rather weird and yet unconvincing enough for me. Why it was even a convention in the first place. It was so puzzling and yet weird. Now before we start the show, please hit the like button on my channel and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon and put your comments on the comment section whether you agree with my opinions or not. And as you know, politics is an open discussion and all of you are open for your opinions. So let's start off the show. Now the Republican Convention for some people was a smashing hit. Now that's for the Republican Party, it is a smashing hit. For me, I'm not so much. I don't think it was a smashing hit. The DNC, or the Democratic National Convention on the other hand, was a success even if it was extremely rather massive and colossal. It felt right, made sense, it felt a traditional convention which you got few Republicans also saying few amount of words about supporting of Joe Biden. And in the Republican Convention it seemed they were more forced to say things. For Pete's sake, imagine this. Sometimes you got to ask yourself a question about the Republican Convention from the start. Now again, I don't know whether it's racism or idiocy. That depends on to be seen whether you to be judged. I believe in its racism was there, but maybe it's not done on purpose. The Republicans have to reject racism on their side because they have to accept there's racism, but if they can't, because the Republican Party all the time has always been involved in racism acts, even if they're not willingly have been. Everyone knows what happened during H.W. Bush. Of course, infamously, LA, the riots after Rodney King. It wasn't a secret that the entire city burned in fire. It's not a surprise why it acquired. Thanks to H.W. Bush's incompetence at the time, it certainly made sense that what it acquired, or the recent violence by the Black Lives Matter movement. Sometimes violence could be stopped only if you make right actions. And sometimes when people are fed up with not seeing changes, you either enforce it or you either vent out your frustration. And if United States, as a nation that's one of the world's top 3 most powerful nations in the world, they have to accept that freedom of speech does allow them to express their personal opinion. And if it's unheard, they will express with the worst ritual. And it's not the first time the United States, people in the United States have done that. And it's also it's a bit of a comical joke sometimes in some areas. Infamously, one speaker in the convention yelled so hard, she spoke with such a loud voice as if she was trying to convince us something. I want to ask the question, if you weren't awake at the time, she surely woken you up with a loud voice. She definitely woke you up to absolute limitation. But President Trump, being President Trump, had a fair share of circumstances. Here it is. For him, his convention may have been good for himself. But he hoped for a bigger gain in his poll numbers or for the convention. Of course, it's not the point because you can't get a boom in a convention if there's no goddamn effect about it. While for Joe Biden, he got a serious boost certainly for him, in his convention, the DNC. But the thing is, the election is not ever really over. I might even say Donald Trump can still win. Technically, it's not technically over until it's over. Anything can happen. And no surprise, any surprises can acquire. But the problem is, will the surprise acquire to President Trump instead of Joe Biden? Now remember, Joe Biden is the challenger. President Trump is the man in power. If you're often clear, last time around 4 or 5 years ago, Donald Trump was the challenger and Hillary Clinton was sort of the set house establishment. So the question that lies is, does change of power change circumstances for the candidacy? It surely does. When you are standing president runs for election for your next 5-year term, people might review things you do and people might question your achievements and success. As in the last video, we talked about President Trump's achievements and successes and some failed points We often talked about how successful President Trump when it comes to the economy, how brilliant he's been with the economy. I would compare him for the 90s or the Clinton era about the economical success. But however, money doesn't solve problems. Of course, it doesn't. Money doesn't give happiness. Money doesn't solve social unrest, as what you can imagine. Money doesn't solve all that. The reality is there have to be social reform. And President Trump is the man for the job, with his toughness and etc. But only if he is willing to accept racism exists. Now, that's this big thing we talk about. President Obama is getting applauded everywhere he goes because he's the first ever black president. I have one question to ask. Why is such a big occasion for us? Why can't any president, why can't a race of any color be any president? What's wrong with that? Why do we have that problem? I mean, it's almost like the people in the States just knows what they're doing wrong, just don't want to change the tide. People are the people, you have the power in your hands to change the tide. Now, President Trump might be one of the most successful presidents the United States had, apart from the social affairs. Apart from that, he might be one of the most successful presidents yet. And I would not be surprised you still remember him for that. And I argue that Richard Nixon is remembered for having wonderful achievements in China, how relations were opening in China and etc. Or Ronald Reagan remembered for the Berlin Wall. But no one forgets under Ronald Reagan, the President Ronald Reagan, that how bad the economy tanked. Thanks to Reagan economics, nothing really improved except things became worse. The only grazing service successor H.W. Bush had was the economy had fallen so much, it can't go any more lower. It can't hit worse in that least country's stature. It cannot hit worse circumstances. So generally speaking, H.W. Bush, by the time he went out, the economy was recovering, sort of slow decline. Of course, we all know what President Trump did. We all know what President Bill Clinton did. It's no secret. Of course, you have to understand the circumstances at the time is different to right now. In the 90s, there was tremendous social unrest after the Rodney King circumstances where LA was almost burned in protest and violence. Stores were robbed. And however, there's also something I like to call trying to make things better by not accepting. If you can't accept something, just don't go to bash on it. I mean, it's almost as if the circumstances. I would hope that President Trump comes and speak for himself, because I know that President Trump is a strong, powerful president. He has a strong mindset. He doesn't need Trump Jr. or anyone to come to tell him how good he is. I believe President Trump is a genuine success story. But the problem is for President Trump getting genuine success story, he needs to express himself in the right areas. What's happening is he keeps hitting in the wrong buttons every single time. I know he's a great president. All of us know that during these times, despite social unrest and circumstances, you got deep pockets. And the only reason you are surviving in these circumstances might only be the case. I mean, look, there are rumors about the stimulus payments are probably making people spend less money in these COVID-19 pandemic times. I presume that's a circumstance, but you get my point. Infamously, I want to say this. I want to see a world where, and trust me, all of us deserve to be in a world where a person of any race or any color deserves to be elected for the toughest or the biggest spot in office. They deserve to be. Color or the race shouldn't matter. Cultural differences should be avoided once you come into position of power. I strongly believe that. Look, everyone has strong opinions about something, but the level of respect, the level of responsibility you have once you become a politician or a president or a prime minister or anything, it's that you must avoid all your personal opinions and do what's right for the country. At least be kind about it. President Trump certainly didn't start off well 5 years ago, but of course we all know what President Trump's words about Mexican community certainly splashed water 5 years ago, but it didn't affect him. He won. People certainly thought there was certain problem with immigration. People thought there was certain circumstances. I guess there was issue. But the problem is that 5 years later, President Trump has neither solved the problem, neither it's gone much better. In fact, we are having the same issue as it is. But the problem is it an issue? Is immigration a problem for the United States? The United States is built on immigration. The Italian communities, everyone that small business owners are not born in the United States most of the time. So if we can let them come into the United States and there is no problem and let them build family trees, what's wrong allowing more people to come in? I mean, I get the numbers are increasing and it's staggering. I get it. But the numbers will always stagger because you can't blame Mexico for their faults. Some countries are not simply picture perfect. Just accept it. And of course you got to understand separating parents from children. Let's set one thing straight. That's the worst thing you can probably do in these times. President Trump's, it's not his fault, President Trump's fault. It's a system that's gone on for years in this country. Something that's gone for years in this country. I mean, technically speaking, it's gone for years. It's not his fault, but it's certainly, he can put a different spin on that in typical political fashion, but he rather chose to not to put a spin on it. Instead, he had to go with the vibe with the cob. But I presume it's a deemed fine circumstances, I presume to say. But whatever said or done, it doesn't matter what I think. It's come down to you people. And I also often ask, they said, imagine what is like to be under a Trump presidency. We have been under a Trump presidency for 5 years, so we sort of know what it's like to be a President Trump presidency time 5 years. And people, let's get one damn thing straight. Most of the countries around the world are opening borders up. But the United States can't open the country because people are refusing to wear masks. And if people can wear masks, so many things can be achieved. So much country can open up. The country can open up for business. But people are simply refusing to wear a mask. I don't get it. I mean, I get how big the nation is, but I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe blaming people is unfair. I mean, it's unfair blaming people if your president doesn't wear a mask until the goddamn forces it to be. I presume it's the circumstances. I presume it to be. But United States, you are a very important nation for this world. You might be the number one most powerful nation in the world. And if you don't open up, there's a big problem in the world that coexists. I mean, I got nothing more to say on this video, but far as the Republican National Convention concerned, I can say one thing. It might be one of the most racist conventions, or maybe not racist conventions. It's one of the most conventions I saw in a party in denial about racism. I said this before in the video. My final quote. It's a racism special against racism. I believe racism shouldn't exist for skin color or anything. Any person, any culture deserves to get success, but racism is a two-way street. Some things in your cultures might not work in some countries. But again and again, it's called adaptability. As if as all of us humans, if we can adapt to ourselves, be around people, someday who don't know, we might be in freaking Mars together, and then I guess it's something the human beings should do. Stay united, stay together, cut our differences, let's adjust our circumstances and live happily. Thank you very much for joining my show and join my future shows.